It's another week of high school football, which means it's another week of Beyond the Scoreboard. Good evening from our LCAP studios. Eric Thomas and Tim Continenza with you here this week. James Dotson is on assignment and will rejoin us on Friday night for our coverage, but next week he'll be back with the podcast next week. Beyond the Scoreboard is brought to you by Penn Ohio Bottled Water. Stay refreshed by enjoying hot or cold water at the click of a button, or enjoy a cup of coffee with our bottom-loading water cooler option. Tim Continenza, great week again last week. I mean, we had some incredible action across the area last week. And it starts, we'll get into the crux of it here with recapping last week's action. We also, on the show tonight, have Wilmington head coach Brandon Phalion, who we saw last Saturday night just pull apart Reynolds. So we'll talk to him. It's a pre-recorded interview. He's not going to be live with us in the studio tonight. James talked to him earlier in the week, so we're going to run that for you coming up in segment number 2. But just some quick thoughts before we get into the guts of it here about the week that was.
I think we're finding out the real contenders right now for conference titles, and the ones that are who are really truly playoff bound type teams. And we're finding out what teams are right on the edge, the borderline, kind of like Newcastle. Right now, Newcastle still has an opportunity, as we mentioned, but they've been tested the last 2 weeks, and it's not been good. Let's be honest. But I think we are seeing some of the schools rise to the occasion and continue to get better. I mean, look at Neshannock and what they have achieved. They had the one blemish, but since then they have been nothing but a good quality football team. Laurel continues to improve. So I think we're seeing some of the better teams kind of rise up the standings as we get into the deep part of the schedule.
We'll talk a little bit more about every game that was, but of course, coming up in 3 weeks. Can you believe that? 3 weeks already? 3 weeks, and we're going to be done with the regular season, and then WPIL playoffs will be here. We do have some playoff news as far as our coverage goes, and we'll start the show off with this tonight. As far as, and a lot of you have been asking about this, so we'll tell you right now what the news is. As far as our playoff broadcasts go, we are going to have a free audio broadcast for every playoff game this school year. We will have as many of the video broadcasts as we can possibly do, but they're going to be behind the NFHS paywall, as is the way things go here in WPIL land now with all the playoffs being behind NFHS. We'll also have some of our free broadcasts, free video broadcasts as well. They're going to be limited, so you just have to log onto our website when we get the playoff schedule, and we will need to hit up some sponsorships for that. So if you're interested in helping us out for the free video portion of it, you can connect with James Dotson. You can go to lcsportsnet.com or find us on social media and reach out to James and let him know that you're interested. So the good news is we're going to have free audio for all the playoff games. The other news is that we're going to have video for all of them, at least most of them anyway. They're going to be on the NFHS network, which is the way things go. But we're going to be proud to bring as many of the playoff games in the way it looks right now, and there's a lot to go. Mohawk, Laurel still in the mix. Newcastle still in the mix. Neshannock is obviously one of the favorites. Elwood City is one of the, we're going to have plenty of playoff action coming up here in a few weeks.
It's going to be a lot of fun. And you're right. There's going to be a lot of representation here in Lawrence County, as it normally is. And, as a broadcaster, I came through radio. So doing audio only is really good. I know you did this exact same thing. So, and James has, and same with Lee. So, the quality of the broadcast will be there. You'll get all the information you need. Obviously, things change year to year, and this is what it is. And, with the paywall, this is where we're at. But I love the idea that we're going to be able to cover all the schools. And if they're in the playoffs, we're going to be there. And that's the bottom line. And we're going to bring it to the audience that needs to hear it. And, it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's a great opportunity. And, like I said, things change. However, we adapt and we move forward.
Yeah, nothing beats doing a game on the radio. I know we do the video component here, but nothing beats that. We both cut our teeth doing that, and that's going to be a lot of fun when the playoffs hit. Let's jump right into last week's action, and we're going to start with that game that was at Montour last week, and not a great showing for Newcastle. In their second consecutive showdown, they were blasted by Alex All right. Well, sorry about that. We had a little technical snafu there, so hopefully we're back with you. And we apologize for that. But anyway, we were getting into the crux of last week's Newcastle loss to Montour, 51-6. And again, 19 penalties for Newcastle in that game for 153 yards, and more yards and penalties in offense. The other key thing in that game, too, was they lost quarterback Kyrell Harris, and they lost wide receiver Nate McKnight. And their offense just did not seem to be able to recoup from that. And they had some undisciplined plays, and things just sort of unraveled pretty quickly.
Two things you mentioned there that obviously need to be talked about is, penalties has been an issue with Newcastle all season long. Obviously, they got to clean that up. They have to find a way to cut that in half, if not more, and give their team an opportunity when they have the ball or defensively to prevent any extra first downs scenarios. But losing both Harris and McKnight, that is 2/3 of your offense. Those are your big plays, out of your quarterback and your wideout. That leaves only Gardner. To use an old, Bill Belichick style of thinking is, if I can take away your best players, I'll make you, use somebody else. Well, if you lose 2 of your 3 best players on offense, then it's a lot easier to shut you down. And that's, I think, what happened. And, Newcastle is a big play offense. It has been all season long, and there's nothing wrong with that type of a play when you have the athletes like Harris, McKnight, and Gardner, just to name 3. And I think long term, that's a difficult thing. If you lose one of them, if you shut them down, it becomes a more difficult battle. And then you add penalties on top of it, it makes it rough. But, I mean, we knew it was going to be a long stretch on the road here for Newcastle. And when they, started last week at Aliquippa and this past week at Montour, we're hoping for better results and a little bit more competitive, games from them. But I think this is something they can learn from and build. And, they're going to have to face West Allegheny this week, on the road again. So, they've been thrown a huge challenge with the schedule this year. There's no question.
The interesting thing about this is, though, Montour they play Ambridge this week, and then they play Aliquippa, which is probably going to be the conference title game in 2 weeks. Yet Montour still has to play West Allegheny. So if Newcastle can win this game on Friday night, and we'll talk more about this in the preview, but if they can win the game on Friday night and then Montour can beat West Allegheny or vice versa, I mean, they're going to win out somewhere if one takes care of the other. But in their perfect world, if they want to get a wild card spot, handle your business against West Allegheny this week. Hopefully everybody's healthy. We don't know for sure yet. But win that game and then hope that Montour comes back and basically kicks West Allegheny to the curb later in the season, and you still might be able to sneak in with a wild card berth.
Well, yeah. I mean, you just kind of like you said, a elimination type scenario. You look at who beat whom and how it all stands up. And obviously final scores will probably play somewhat into that, formula. But you're right. I mean, you look at the matchups. If you beat someone head to head, you should have the leg up on them. And it's like you said, this kind of is a Parkway Conference playoff game in the sense that the winner of that game is going to have an opportunity to make claim to a wild card place. And I think that's the key. And for Newcastle, as we just mentioned, they have to clean up the penalties. I think right now, I mean, even if they're down players, they have to find a way to clean up the penalties because they can't have a big play called back. And let's be honest, that offense is designed for big plays.
The other big game in the area last week, Elwood City. I don't know that anybody has 3 bigger wins than Elwood City this season of the teams that we cover because they've beaten Mohawk, Neshannock at Neshannock, and then they clipped Western Beaver last week on the road. They're 6-0 in the Midwestern Conference. We'll talk about standings later. Elijah Palmer McCain in this game, 6-point win, 26-20, 29 carries, 110 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Chris Smiley, we've talked about him a lot this season and what he's gone through throwing the football for him. He was only 5 of 13 for the second straight game, but he also rushed 16 times for 73 yards, and he had 2 touchdowns. Elwood runs for 212 yards. And I've been on the Elwood defense the whole season, I mean, from the jump.
Yeah.
6 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, an interception, and a fumble recovery. They withstand a 300-yard performance from Javian Peel from Western Beaver and hold them off.
Got to give them credit. I mean, they find a way to win. I mean, they do what they necessarily need to do. The defense, as you mentioned, has been just stellar for them. They've only given up 85 points this year. They're only giving up 14 points per game. Yeah, they gave up 20 last week to Western Beaver, but again, they were able to get the job done. And you have EPM running the ball. Smiley's kind of more of a manager quarterback. Let's be honest. He does make some big plays, either running the ball or finding a receiver or EPM out of the backfield. His 5 for 13 is less than stellar. However, he's managed the game properly, and hasn't turned over the ball, and that's the key. I mean, they're not putting themselves in a bad situation where the offense turned over the ball and give their opponents a great field position or opportunity to score because of the turnover. So I think when you look at what they have achieved, they continue to play great football. And it's classic football. Run the ball, use the play action, try to get the tight end involved, find a receiver who, is going to make a play on third down. It's nothing, outrageously fancy, but it's working, and it's what they do. And Coach Bradley has done this year after year after year in his career. I'm not surprised to see them achieving what they have done.
I don't want to take anything away from anybody else left on their schedule. That's the last hurdle for them.
Yes.
So they probably are going to run this table and win this Midwestern Conference, even if they have a trip up somewhere. They probably would already have the tiebreaker over Mohawk or Western Beaver anyway. So they likely are going to win this conference title, which is an amazing. I mean, they were the preseason hype, and they lived up to it so far.
Yeah, they have, and they deserve it. I mean, you and I got to see them play Neshannock early in the season, a non-conference game, and the way they handled that game and the way they came into Neshannock, knowing the history, knowing what they were up against, and the weather, the delays, the whole thing. You seen a team really come together that day, I thought.
Yeah, I agree.
And that has propelled them to these opportunities where, they had to come over, a big win. I mean, let's face it, on the road at Western Beaver was a huge win for them. As a 6-point win, it's in the W column. They're still undefeated. They're still moving forward.
Big defensive stop in that game, too, on a 4th down on the opening drive when Western Beaver had the ball. Peel, by the way, 22 of 43 for 315. And, oh, by the way, Western scored twice, 90 seconds apart late. That's what cuts the lead down to 6. So a game that Elwood City really controlled just about 95% of the way, and then Western Beaver gets it a little bit closer late, and Elwood's able to hang on and remain undefeated. Mohawk defeated New Brighton last week 35-19. Bobby Fadden, a great night, throwing the football, 11 of 20. He tossed a touchdown as well. And he's got a quarterback rating, by the way, of 98 and 97 the last 2 games. Mohawk continues to run the ball well, 161 yards on the ground. Another great night from Cash Stratton, 94 yards. He scored twice. Blake Logan was back to his old tricks with 109 yards receiving. The Mohawk defense with 2 interceptions. They got all their tough games out of the way.
Yeah, they do.
So they're basically playing downhill the rest of the way now, and they might. I mean, they should
make the playoffs.
Should make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they're 4-2 right now overall. They're 3-1 in the conference. There's a great chance that they can, finish 2 in the conference and see what happens. They're only what's impressive is they're scoring 33 points a game, and what you mentioned about Blake Logan's being a receiver, getting over 100 yards last week. If they can get that connection working again, like they did in the first week, and be a consistent thing to go along with that running game, they're going to be a tough out because they're going to be able to do things that most teams hope to do, during a football season, meaning be able to throw on first down or be able to throw on third down, be able to run on first down, be able to run on third down. And you just don't know how to defend that because you can do that at multiple sets. And when you do that, it makes a defense on its edge the entire game. And I love what, Mohawk can do going forward. I mean, this is a team that has been through it's a brand new team from last year. It's new players, every year's a new thing as you get graduation and turnover and new players coming in. However, they've really made their mark in the last couple of years about what this program wants to be and how to play and what they want to achieve. And Coach McClellan has done that. And I think we're seeing some of that as the season progresses. I think the first 4 or 5 weeks of a season is find out who we are, get your identity, be able to be a team that moves forward, and improves. And then the last 5 weeks is an opportunity to really accentuate what you do well and make other teams play down. You're playing downhill while they're trying to climb uphill.
How important would a second place finish be for this Mohawk team to basically guarantee them a spot? Because in the other 2A conferences, the Allegheny Conference, you have South Park, South Allegheny, and Steel Valley are all a game and a half apart. Olsh is right there at 2-2. Ligonier Valley is not out of it at 1-2. In the Century, you have Seton LaSalle at 4-0, Keystone Oaks at 3-1, Washington at 2-1, Waynesburg at 2-1, and then you get down in the Midwestern, it's Elwood City, and then Mohawk is number 2 right now. And they also, Western Beaver behind them in Riverside. So it is paramount for them to get one of those top 2 seeds to assure themselves a berth. Otherwise, who knows? I mean, when you were leaving this up to the human eye test, and I'm not so sure that all these humans that are going to put forth the eye test are going to see all these teams.
I'm always concerned about that,
Right. So you got to make sure you finish 1-2 and assure yourself a spot.
Yeah, that's exactly it. If you can assure yourself an opportunity, that's the best way. Earn your way in. Don't allow someone to, be able to make a case again and not necessarily seeing you play all your games. Go out and do what you need to do to finish number 2 and secure your spot and your opportunity. And I believe they have the ability to do that.
Rochester, we jumped down to single A now, Shenango and Rochester on Friday night. This game is the game that was overshadowed by the injury to Rochester's Carter Mason. And according to TV reports, that was his 4th concussion. He remains in the hospital. If you're interested in helping the family out, there's a GoFundMe link on our Facebook page. You can seek that out and assist the family in his recovery. Some good signs. It looks like he is talking somewhat or is at least alert or coherent in the hospital. So that's a good sign to see. But just walk us through this because you were there on Friday night. That was not a good situation. We were basically done with our game by the time you were telling us from over there that they were bringing in the helicopter and everything. That's just a scary situation, but we'll talk about the game itself here in a second, but just kind of describe everybody being there.
It was a play that kind of looked like a normal football play. He ran the ball, he got stopped, and he got up and he walked to the sideline, and then you got one player already on the field, and then they ran a second play, and that was where the Shenango player had a pulled groin or whatever the case may be, and they were attending him, and then came the collapse. And then when that happened, you're just in a process of figuring out what transpired. And you see the EMS, come over, which were there immediately and did a terrific job. And then they brought in extra EMS the next level to assist. And then that's when you realize that this is going to be serious here. We're not sure exactly what the condition is. And obviously we're on the other sideline. We're up in the booth, and we're trying to figure out what's going on. It's a scary situation when you see an entire stadium go silent. That is the most eerie thing I've ever experienced. And literally, if someone was whispering, you were hearing it. And it was scary.
Now, as far as the game goes, Shenango is still kind of hanging around. They're going to have to beat Laurel on Friday night. We'll talk about that in our preview in our last segment. But as far as this goes, this Rochester team has played tough. They have not really done much damage. They are, by Rochester standards, underachieving a little bit here. And that's secondary now compared to what's happened to their program here in the last week. But that's for Shenango. That's a tough loss. I mean, that really is big time a tough loss because they needed to win that game to keep in kind of the conversation at least. And then you beat Laurel maybe on Friday night, and hey, you're right back in it at that point. For Rochester, that was just their second win. They sit a game ahead of Shenango in the standings. Laurel at 3-0, they're 3-4 overall. Both are behind Southside and Neshannock. We'll talk about those two, obviously, coming up later in the show. But from Shenango's standpoint, to have a shot at the playoffs, they had to win that game on Friday night. Now it becomes a little bit more of an uphill climb, and you got a rival in front of you, so there's still an opportunity, but they're going to have to basically win these next three.
It's a big big climb for them, and it's a difficult thing. And they were a team, Shenango, it just seemed like they were all season long a team that, overachieved in one game, underachieved in the next, and maybe just ran into a better team at certain times in the season, and
obviously dealt with a lot of
a lot of adversity on their own. And the game against Rochester, I thought, quite honestly, Rochester played just better throughout the game from start to finish. You got to give a lot of credit to Shenango. They got out to the early lead. They took advantages of turnovers. They scored quickly. They were able to do it. They added on after a Rochester score. However, from that point on, Rochester just really dominated the line of scrimmage and special teams and really took advantage of opportunities. And once they got the lead, they never relinquished it, and they added on, and that was impressive. I got to give Rochester a lot of credit. Like I said, it was 34-28 at one point, and they just, from that point on, there was 9 minutes left in the game, and they continued to add on after the delay.
Couple of quickies here that we'll hit on. Union beats Beaver Falls 21-8. That is the first win of the season for the Scotties. Jamel Mitchell, 3 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. He had a fumble recovery. He had a 20-yard rush. How about Lucas Stanley in this game, though? 14 of 22 for 203 yards passing. He hit 5 different receivers, and Maddox Thompson had 2 more rushing touchdowns.
Where was that all season?
Yeah, I don't know.
I was going to, those are... I don't know how to explain it, because they've been such run dominant, where maybe 4 or 5 passes the entire game, and just a 2-player offense, and Thompson and Stanley. To get all that involved, to have a mixture of a pass and run game that they had, that makes a lot of sense. They were able to do what they needed to do against Beaver Falls, and give them credit for changing their offensive style here in a game that they needed to win. And, just to show, here's a school that moved up, voluntary moved up from single A to double A, and they've struggled this year. And this is an opportunity, saying, okay, we still believe that we made the right decision, just because our record has not achieved what we wanted, that we still can compete, at this level. And I think they're showing that they can. But they're a more complete football team this past week, because they had a passing game that they have not used, or not shown, I should say, successfully in the previous weeks.
I'm going to hold the Laurel discussion for our preview, because they defeated Summit Academy 47-16. I'm not sure what you can really say about this game. It's a team that they had to handle in front of them. They did just that. They stay alive for it. We'll talk a little bit more in depth about Laurel coming up in our preview segment. Neshannock beat Burgettstown 35-0. Gina Mazzocco, 80% completion percentage in that game. Easy win for Neshannock. They keep rolling along. We'll talk more about them in our preview segment, because they got one of the biggest games on their schedule coming up on Friday night. Wilmington on Saturday night defeated Reynolds 56-9. This was a game that was not competitive. Tim and I were there for that one, along with our producer Matt Flannery, who sits to my right tonight. Greyhounds, good game from Wesley Vasquez, 4 or 5 passing all in the first half. Never trailed, mixed up their runners. Complete performance. We'll hear from Brandon Failing coming up in our next segment.
Yeah, just a terrific effort there from the Hounds. All around domination is the best word I can give it to.
And that will be in our next segment. We'll talk to Wilmington head coach, the Greyhounds head coach, Brandon Failing. That'll come your way next on Beyond the Scoreboard as we roll on here from the LCAP studios. It's a Wednesday night. We'll have Brandon Failing next, and then we'll preview the rest of the week to come in high school football here across Lawrence County. You're listening to and watching, for those of you on YouTube, Beyond the Scoreboard here on the Lawrence County Sports Network, powered by LCAP.
Don't get left out to dry. Call the Penn Ohio Bottled Water Company for the fastest and most efficient bottled water delivery service in the area. Penn Ohio offers bottled water ranging from 16.9-ounce bottles to 5-gallon jugs, perfect for your next event or office water cooler system. Also, don't forget to ask about their custom labeling options. Visit PennOhioBottledWater.com for more information and to get a quote on their delivery services. Whether it's at home, in the office, or on the sidelines, Penn Ohio has you covered.
Thank you for calling Axe. Where can we take you today?
To work, to the store, to Grandma's house. Axe can get you there, but it's much more than a ride. It's a joyride.
I'm helping people. I'm getting them out of their house. I'm taking them to their doctors, to the grocery store.
They say I'm entertaining. Okay, we laugh, we joke, we sing, we tell stories.
They're like family to us.
Even if it's the same day, to schedule your joyride, call Axe today.
I love what I do because coming in every day is different.
How can you not enjoy these kids coming up and hugging you and giving you these great smiles all throughout the day?
Seeing the progress that our kids make every single day is one of the reasons I love coming to school.
What should we do? We have fun.
LCAP Early Learning Centers is hiring. Help empower young minds in Lawrence County and become a superhero today. Apply at lcap.org.
It's Beyond the Scoreboard, brought to you by Penn Ohio Bottled Water. Eric Thompson, Tim Continenza with you, our producer tonight, Matt Flannery, as we're back here on our weekly preview show. Our guest tonight is the head coach of the Wilmington Greyhounds, Brandon Fillion. His team was victorious on Saturday night over Reynolds, 56-9, in a game that was really over pretty much by halftime. I mean, they just controlled that game. They bounced back after a tough loss to Farrell a couple of weeks ago, and they were able to get back in the win column against Reynolds tonight. James Dotson caught up with Coach Fillion earlier this week, and here is that conversation with the two of them here on Beyond the Scoreboard.
All right, here continuing on our weekly podcast, Beyond the Scoreboard, let's go off the bench and talk with Coach Brandon Fillion of the Wilmington Greyhounds. Coach Fillion, kind enough to join us. Coach, I can't believe it when we were talking about the beginning of the year how young this team is, but man, they're off to a rip-roaring start to get things going. You know, a couple of big losses against a couple of big powerhouse teams, but you have to be pleased with the way your young team has been playing to start this year.
Well, first of all, James, it's an honor to speak with you here and be on the show. Thank you for having me. To your point, I mean, when you look at the roster, we have two seniors on the roster. Both of those guys doing a good job. Aiden Gardner, our senior captain, providing great leadership. And Evan Richardson, a guy who wasn't with us last year, we're very glad came back out for the team this year. But to your point, with only two seniors on the roster, we're definitely a young football team. When you look at our game against Reynolds on Saturday night, we didn't have any seniors in the starting lineup. So I think that, for myself and our coaching staff, we knew that early in the season there was going to be some growing pains. We were going to have to be patient because, as you said, we are a young football team. But I think now, as we come down the home stretch of the season, I think that those growing pains are behind us. I think the guys have really worked hard. They've shown great development and maturity throughout the season, and I'm very, very pleased with the kind of football they're playing right now.
Oh, they're playing Wilmington football. I mean, no surprise whatsoever. Just, use that ground and pound game, use the misdirection. And talk about that, I think, more than anything. It's one thing to just go up and run the football consistently over and over again, but it's the varieties that you guys run out of that wing tee. What does that say to the quality of your young players, both in the trenches and the ones who are running the football, to be able to, execute at that high level, especially when you're running, misdirections out of that wing tee setup?
Yeah, I think, whenever you look at, some of the guys in the backfield, you look at the yardage leaders, from Saturday night's game, Chase Mitchell-Tree and Jamie Miller would be at the top of that list. I think those guys, did a great job, not only Saturday night, but have done a great job all season long. They're able to handle a lot. We throw a lot at those two guys, to your point, with some of the misdirection and different schemes. So I think those guys have done a great job with everything we've asked them to learn. Also, Freddie Zettner, guy out wide, had a great game for us. He caught some nice passes from Wesley Vasquez, but also had a kickoff return, for a touchdown. So I think that, we're really becoming a dynamic offense to defend, in the sense that we've got multiple playmakers on it. And, speaking of those playmakers, they'd be the first guys to tell you that, without great offensive line play in front of them, they would not have those opportunities. I think our offensive line, again, there's, no seniors on the offensive line. So watching their growth and the way that they have continued to develop and gel as a unit throughout the season, it's been fun for myself and the coaches to watch. I think they've really come together, and, they're able to now communicate pre-snap. If they see different looks, they now know how to make the adjustments and handle those looks. So, very, very pleased with our guys up front.
How much flexibility do you give to Wesley and company in exactly that right there of making the adjustment at the line if they see something that can help make the next play be a better option, maybe to do this instead of that?
Kind of football they're playing. We're really becoming a dynamic offense to defend so than any other positional unit on a football team. And, those guys, they know how to communicate. When they get to the line of scrimmage, they know how to communicate in the huddle between plays. I think they've really got a thorough understanding not only of the plays, but of the concepts behind the plays and the design of the plays. We've worked really hard on that this season. And, those guys have done a great job in their growth. And, really, over the past couple of weeks, that they've really, really got a thorough understanding. And I think that, that's what you want as you head down the home stretch of the season.
You mentioned Chase Mitchell-Tree, one of, I'm sure, very few players you've seen coming through of, playing significant time as a freshman last year. Missed a couple of games early this year, but it really incredible to me when I was looking at the stats. Those are his first rushing touchdowns of the year there Saturday against Reynolds. But let's talk about what you've seen of growth from him, especially from year one to year two.
Yeah, Chase Mitchell-Tree is a special football player. There's no doubt. To do what he did, for us last year as a freshman, very impressive. And he's done nothing but continue with that growth and maturity as a sophomore. I mean, we line him up, all over the place on the football field. We ask him to do so many different things, in all three phases: offensively, defensively, special teams. And, he's always up for the task. He's a joy and a pleasure to coach. He's a selfless player. He's a guy I never have to worry about, hey, did Chase get the football? He's just as happy to block or fake for his teammates as he is to run the ball or catch the ball. He's one of those guys where, the only thing that matters to him is how the team is doing and the team's success. So, really a joy and a pleasure to coach, and, to do what he is doing as a sophomore, very special.
We've talked about Jamie Miller of what he's done again in all three phases. What returned a punt for a touchdown in the first week of the year. Those two are great, 1-2 punch. But throwing in, Mistretta as well as a third guy, and Kettering. You do have a multitude of weapons that you can really use and keep that offense extremely balanced. You can't focus on any one or two guys.
Well, that's always the goal with the wing T offense, James. You want to have that balance. You mentioned Jamie Miller. He had a great game Saturday night. He's one of our assistant captains. I mean, he's provided great leadership and played at a high level all season long. Another guy like Chase, just a joy and a pleasure to coach and work with. And, you mentioned, Michael Mistretta and Kale Kettering. I thought that, from the start of the season till now, they've shown a lot of growth, a lot of development. I think, week in and week out, those guys are continuing, to do nothing but get better. And, whenever you take a look at that, I think that just does nothing but strengthen you when you have, multiple threats on offense that the defense has to prepare for and defend.
Here with Coach Fillion of the Wilmington Greyhounds, and the balance is the key. And, in looking again at one game to the next, it's almost always within one or two carries between your top two or three ball carriers, and now throwing getting a couple quarterback keepers in there with Wesley Pascal as well. But is that something that you, as a coaching staff, are looking at, hey, this guy's got 14 carries, this guy only has 9 right now? Or is it just kind of work out that way based off of if the game plan is going right, then it's going to be basically even by the end of the night?
Yeah, so honestly, one thing that we're never worried about in the game is how many carries so-and-so has. That's there's no coach that's assigned to that. Nobody's looking at that. I'm encouraged to hear you say that it does kind of shake out that way, by the end of the night, because that's a testament to the offensive system that it's working well. We're just calling the plays based on, hey, here's what the defense is giving. Here's what we feel will be successful, whenever, we're calling the plays. But no, there's no consideration given to, hey, so-and-so's only got this amount of carries versus, so-and-so has this amount. We're just calling the plays, based on what we feel is there. And, we're certainly happy when it shakes out that way and there's balance because, again, if we're running the offense to its fullest capability, that's the way it's designed and, the way it's supposed to shake out at the end of the football game.
And you talked about obviously getting the passing game in there, a couple of big touchdowns. Freddie Z having a monster game on the outside. We were impressed with the old school style of a three-step drop and a perfect pass there in the corner thrown by Wesley. I mean, obviously we haven't seen a lot of it, but is that something we can hopefully see some more of to mix it in here the rest of the way of letting them air it out a little bit? He threw a couple of really nice balls there to Freddie in the end zone.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. I mean, I think, again, that makes us, more difficult to defend when we can get the passing attack, working to complement the ground game. I thought Freddie ran some great routes. I thought Wesley threw some great balls. And I thought Freddie just, two of those catches, were just excellent catches. They were contested. He showed great, focus and determination in bringing those footballs in the way that he did. So, yeah, that's something that, we certainly hope to be able to continue, is our goal here, down the stretch of the regular season and into the playoffs is to, balance our offensive attack as best we can.
We've talked so much about offense. Can't believe we've gone nearly 10 minutes without talking about the Hounds defense. Talk about their improvement again with a young squad defensively as well. But just talk about what you've seen improvement-wise from them over the course of this year so far.
Well, I think, one of the things that we have really, really emphasized all summer long is tackling. It was a focal point from day one, and, it continues to be a focal point today. And I think the guys have really bought in. I think that, with the exception of, the Farrell game, I think we've tackled really, really well all season long. The guys they're focused on it. They know it's a priority. And I thought Reynolds, was another great example of that. I thought our tackling, overall was on point. I thought that, I was very pleased to see that our defense was strong, versus both the run and the pass on Saturday night. And that's certainly, what we want to be able to do is, we don't want to just be great at one of those areas. We want to be great at, defending opponents, passing the game and rushing attack. And, it was just great to see, that complete defense, out there being played. I thought, as I said, we tackled well. We created 2 turnovers. Anytime you're creating turnovers on defense, that's a great thing. I thought that, the 3 levels, on the defensive line, second level with the linebackers and third level with the secondary. I thought all 3 of those units performed very well. And again, that's what we're looking for at this time of the season.
A couple more quick questions for you, Coach. This young team is very quickly turning into a contender that we thought they might be at the beginning of the year, maybe even exceeding expectation. But what's one of the main things that you need to continue to see improvement on to get to that next level and potentially be playing for a D10 championship here in a few weeks?
Well, I think it's consistency, James. Whenever you have a young team, as you said, I thought that, against Reynolds Saturday, we probably played our most complete and best football game of the season. But it's one thing to do it for 1 week. Do you have the consistency, to do it week in and week out? Because when you get into the playoffs, you can't have that, down week or that lapse. It's 1 week Super Bowls each and every single week. So I think that, what we'll be looking for and what we'll be stressing, with a young football team is that consistency.
Keys to this Friday's game against Mercer, another 1A opponent. They played a pretty close game against Reynolds. What have you seen on tape, and what do you have to do against Mustangs?
I think, whenever I look at Mercer, I think the first thing that, stands out to me is they have very good play along the offensive and defensive lines. They're very stout on the line. They do a nice job of controlling the line of scrimmage. So, we'll have to make sure our offensive and defensive lines are up for the challenge and ready to go. I think that'll be a focal point for both teams, Mercer and us, to try to establish the line of scrimmage. And I think that whichever team is able to do that better, we'll have a good shot to win the football game.
Final question for you, Coach. Talked about keys on Friday night. What's the key to the soccer match tonight?
Well, hey, it's one thing I'm proud of with soccer. We've got a lot of good overlap there. With the you're talking, James, the boys soccer team here, correct?
I'm talking about your soccer team, Coach.
Oh.
At the youth level. Come on, we're working them young.
At the youth level here, yes, I get to do a little bit of a double dip there. Get to it's awesome, to be involved with my kids' soccer teams. I look forward to that. Fortunately, just practice, tonight after the varsity football practice. So I'll enjoy, being on a soccer field with Braylon and Beckett. But, thinking just a little bit, I will say just on the point, we're talking soccer, it's really super cool for us. We've got two players, our two kickers, Ryder Turvo and Isaac Maynard, who are also, great players for the boys varsity soccer team. And, the other night, shout out to Ryder, he was perfect on his extra points. And frankly, some of the snaps, weren't very good. Freddie Zetton did a great job to get those onto the block. Ryder, adjusted the timing, was able to put them through. So I guess while we're talking soccer, just a quick shout out to those guys who are doing double duty with the varsity football team and making great contributions to both of our teams.
We love those guys doing double duty. We love you doing double duty, working with your kids as well. Really fun to hear. And thanks again, Coach, for joining us here tonight. Double, triple duty, even with everything going on in your world. I appreciate you taking a few minutes out to chat with us here this evening.
Absolutely. My pleasure. It's been great to have you guys, seeing LC SportsNet there on Saturday night. We look forward to continued collaboration and coverage this season. So thanks a lot, James.
I appreciate it, Coach Fillion. Best of luck. We'll be seeing you down the road.
All right, James. Take care. Thanks.
Thanks.
And there is Brandon Fillion and James Dotson earlier this week. Thanks to Coach Fillion for giving us a couple of minutes there. And yeah, their offense on Saturday was, Reynolds is not on that level. They're not a very deep team. But the Wilmington offense really got back and got right against them on Saturday.
I was just looking at some stats for Reynolds coming into last Saturday night's game. Their offense and defensive numbers were almost exactly the same, giving either points scored and points given up. And then to put 56 points on a team, your offense is doing a phenomenal job. To hold a team to 9 points for the entire game, it was probably, like Coach Fillion mentioned, their most complete game. And they got a lot of people involved. So it was an impressive win for them. And they do have to finish out the strong because, let's face it, Farrell's, will win that conference. And, District 10, the seedings will matter. So they finish out strong. They're going to be in great shape.
We'll talk more about Wilmington here in a second in our last segment. We will not have an Around the County here this week for you. We'll bring that back next week. We weren't able to put that together for you in time tonight to get it on the podcast, so that'll return next week. So our final segment tonight, we'll look at all the action and give you a quick preview of what's to come on the Lawrence County Sports Network on Friday night. We have a big Friday night for you with a very special plan in place for you. We'll detail that next. You're listening and watching Beyond the Scoreboard, I beg your pardon, on the Lawrence County Sports Network, powered by LCAP.
Penn Ohio Bottled Water Company for the fastest and most efficient bottled water delivery service in the area. Penn Ohio offers bottled water ranging from 16.9-ounce bottles to 5-gallon jugs, perfect for your next event or office water cooler system. Also, don't forget to ask about their custom labeling options. Visit PennOhioBottledWater.com for more information and to get a quote on their delivery services. Whether it's at home, in the office, or on the sidelines, Penn Ohio has you covered.
Thank you for calling Axe. Where can we take you today?
To work, to the store, to Grandma's house. Axe can get you there, but it's much more than a ride. It's a joyride.
I'm helping people. I'm getting them out of their house. I'm taking them to their doctors, to the grocery store.
They say I'm entertaining. Okay, we laugh, we joke, we sing, we tell stories.
They're like family to us.
Even if it's the same day, to schedule your joyride, call Axe today.
I love what I do because coming in every day is different.
How can you not enjoy these kids coming up and hugging you and giving you these great smiles all throughout the day? You guys ready?
Seeing the progress that our kids make every single day is one of the reasons I love coming to school.
What should we do? We have fun.
LCAP Early Learning Centers is hiring. Help empower young minds in Lawrence County and become a superhero today. Apply at lcap.org.
It's Beyond the Scoreboard here on the Lawrence County Sports Network. Eric Thomas and Tim Continenza with you here for a week. What is it, week 8?
Yes.
All right, week 8. week 7 elsewhere. I don't know.
Whatever it may be. I have no idea.
We got 2 more weeks of regular season action.
Exactly.
To complete 10 weeks, and then it'll be on to the WPIL playoffs. If you missed the announcement at the beginning of the program tonight, we will have live audio coverage of every playoff game this school year. We'll have as many video broadcasts as possible behind the NFHS paywall, and we'll also have some video broadcasts for free, but they'll be limited. So if you're interested in sponsoring any of that, you can reach out to James Dotson. You can go on the lcsportsnet.com website or find James on social media. You can go to the Lawrence County SportsNet Twitter feed, and you can hit him up with a direct message there, or on our Facebook page, Lawrence County SportsNet. You can contact him that way as well. Again, no Beyond the County this week. That'll come back next week, so we'll get to our previews here in a second. Want to detail what we're going to do on Friday night, though, because this is really cool, and I know I'm looking forward to it. We're going to be a part of it, but we're not going to be here for it, but we will be a part of it on Friday night. Our coverage on Friday night, of course, we're going to have Laurel taking on Shenango. That's the big rivalry game. Huge game for both teams. We'll talk more about that in a second. Neshannock is going to travel to Southside for a critical 1A matchup, and we'll talk more about that in a second as well. Those 2 games are huge. For Neshannock, that's basically a conference title game. So they win that game, they're going to have the inside track on winning the conference, the Big 7. So that's a big game. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you want to watch 6 games at one time, you're going to be able to do that on Friday night, because what's going to happen is James Dotson will be here in our Lawrence County Sports Network studios, and we are going to put together our own version of the Red Zone. And what's going to happen is we're going to have 6 games. We actually have it. You can't see it on our video feed tonight, but we actually have the monitor up here in our studio, and we had a mock-up of the 6 screens that are going to be up at one time. And what's going to happen is we're going to have 6 feeds from different games, including the 2 that we're bringing you on Friday night, Laurel, Shenango, and Neshannock and Southside. James will be able to go to the audio of those 2 games. Tim and I will be at the Southside game, Southside Neshannock. He'll be able to go to the audio of those games, and these are the ones that we're going to have for you. Laurel, Shenango, Neshannock, Southside, Union Freedom, Elwood City and Riverside, West A and Newcastle, and Wilmington and Mercer. And we'll just tap into them, and he'll bring you live updates as the game is going on. He'll be watching all 6 of them here, Scott Hansen style, on a Sunday, an NFL Sunday, and he'll just pop around and go to each game and let you know what's going on with it. I can't wait to watch this thing on a replay.
You and me both. I mean, I was talking to a few of my friends this past week, and I says, no, you want to see something unique that's never been done before at the high school level. As far as I know, I says, we're going to do our own version of the Red Zone at Lawrence County Football Friday, call it whatever you want, and it is going to be just phenomenal. I mean, coverage of 6 games at one time, and James will be hosting it. He'll give you all the updates that's going on. It is, when I was telling some friends of mine who were all Minnesota Viking fans, we were all together for the morning. Don't ask me why. I just met them over the years. They're a whole club onto themselves. That's a different story. But needless to say, they played in London this past week, so they had a big gathering and all that, and I went to support them anyways. And I was telling all of them about what we're doing on Friday night, and not one of them says, oh my God, I can get this on my computer, I can put this on my big screen if I have a YouTube app. I says, yes, just do it. Enjoy it, because it'll be something uniquely different. And everyone I've talked to over here in Pennsylvania, same thing. It's exciting opportunity, to present high school football in a brand new way. And it is something I think, we're going to make a lot of people jealous in this state when they see this on replay.
I took a picture of the mock-up earlier. I actually just put that out on my Twitter feed, so you can actually, if you go to the replies of the Lawrence County Twitter feed, you can see that picture. And actually, James tells me that our producer, Matt Flannery, is going to be on the mic on Friday night as well, too.
Excellent.
So I don't know if I want to watch it now. That's the thing. I don't know. I don't know if I want to watch it now. Maybe I just meant to watch it with the volume down.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's going to be awesome. Can't wait to actually go back and watch that. I'll be traveling Friday after our game's over, so I'm going to have it on in the car.
Right.
Watching it on the replay after en route to my old stomping grounds on Friday night, late Friday night. So I can't wait to check that out. And we hope you like it too, because if you do, maybe we'll bring it back at some point. It would be a little tough to pull something like that off for playoffs because of
the
paywalls and all that. But for regular season, if we can pull that off, that's something that we'll definitely revisit. And never know. Basketball might be a situation too.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw this out there, and shame on me, James. I apologize ahead of time, but that last week of the season could be very important, and you never know what information you want to gather. So this is a great opportunity to see what we can pull off, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think it's going to be dynamic. I really, truly do. I really love what we're doing here. Every year we've challenged ourselves to do something uniquely different and bring it in, and give it up to Matt, give it up to all the people who are involved, James, and LCAP for allowing us to have this opportunity to do something so unique that I think when people see this, their jaws are going to drop.
Now, I do want to warn you, too, we won't have audio from all of the games, so we won't be able to go to audio from all of them because some of the schools we're going to take their feed.
James will be here to narrate it.
But he's going to narrate it, so he's going to take you through there and kind of guide you on the play-by-play from the studio perspective. Some of the feeds that we're going to take won't have announcers with it, so that's why we won't be able to tap into some audio on those. But as far as the games that we have and our friends with the Elwood City, we'll be able to tap into those and bring you some audio from all that going on Friday night. So we look forward to bringing you that on Friday in addition to our 2 games. Let's jump into our previews now. We'll start with that Laurel-Shenango game. 3-4 Laurel, 3-0 in the Big 7. They take on Shenango, 1-4 overall, 1-3 in the Big 7. We said it earlier, Shenango's playoff chances took a hit with the loss to Rochester last week. Laurel's playing the first of 3 straight games in which they have to win these games to secure a top 2 seed. They're going to get with Shenango on Friday, Southside, and then they finish up in the Shannock. So we find out what this Laurel team is about the last 3 weeks of the season. If they're battle-tested, they play these games tight, they do a good eyeball test. Even if they don't win all 3 of them, they might end up getting a wild card somewhere. Lucas Santini, one of the leading passers in the WPIL, we know that. Shenango, Sam Patton, he's played really well. They played fine on Friday, just did not win that game against Rochester, and this is a big rivalry game on Friday night.
It really is. And, what a unique season Laurel has had. I mean, out of conference schedule, they unfortunately did not win a game. They get in conference now 3-0. The defense has played remarkably better. Not that they played terrible in the first four weeks of the season, but you can see when they got in conference, they've basically outscored their opponents, 3-1, which is phenomenal when you really look at the numbers. And I think, it's going to be interesting. Shenango is a team that lives and breathes on momentum. I got to see that last week. When momentum hits them, they take full advantage of it, and they're able to make plays. The problem what they did is they also put themselves behind the 8 ball with some penalties at bad timings and made it more difficult for them to overachieve some of the scenarios that they put them in. So I think it's going to be important for Shenango to be able to, be who they are, run the ball, and take advantage of it because their defense and special teams created turnovers yesterday or last Friday. If they can do that again, they're going to be in a ball game. And we already know, Laurel has played defensive ball games in the past, against Elwood City and against, a few others. So if it becomes a battle of wills, it's going to be who makes the least mistakes that's going to have the upper hand in that game.
And Laurel, again, has a shot with games against Southside and Neshannock. That game against Southside next week, if Neshannock is victorious there, or the game against Neshannock in 2 weeks, it might be a winning it in situation. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. But if Southside loses to Neshannock and Laurel wins, that's a monster game next week, and Laurel's got it all right in front of them to close out the season. Elsewhere in the Big 7, the game that Tim and I will be at on Friday night, Neshannock 6-1, they're 3-0. Southside Beaver 5-1, they're also 3-0. Inside track for the division title with a win. Both have to play Laurel yet. Neshannock, since the loss to Elwood City on September 6th, they've won 4 in a row. They've done so by a combined 140-28, and they have 2 shutouts. They're playing their best football of the season right now. There's no question. These 2 teams have met within the last 10 years, and they were both Neshannock blowouts. I don't really have a good feel for this game just yet because Southside runs the wing T. They're power-oriented football. They got a lot of pieces that they can get the ball to. The one thing I would say that if I'm Neshannock that I look at and go, we might be able to exploit that. They're going to play a freshman quarterback on Friday night at Southside.
I did not hear about that.
Yeah, so I believe they're going with the freshman on Friday night. I will double check that, but this game is for all the marbles right now in this conference. I mean, this is essentially a playoff game, and we'll see how this goes. But this ought to be a really entertaining game.
It really should be. And then you look at what Neshannock has to offer and the playmakers they have. I mean, you got Gino Mazzocco, who's just under 1,000 yards passing this year. So he's just on the verge of really doing that. He has 12 touchdown passes, and then he adds almost, I think, 350 yards rushing the ball. So a dynamic player that they can really take advantage. And you got Akins at running the ball. So they got a nice mixture of things. And then you got Don Cabela's, who's that three-phase player, offensively, defense, special teams. And I think when you look at the makeup of Neshannock coming into this game, Neshannock has a chance to maybe repeat what you were talking about earlier, where they've blown them out. But every year's a new gear. You can't go by past experiences. But I like where Neshannock stands and what they do and the playmakers they have. The question is, you look at what Neshannock's defense has done in conference. They've only given up 28 points. I mean, that's in 3 ball games. That's getting it done.
Yeah, it really is. And they will play Dawson Frazier at Southside. He is a 5'10 freshman. He is going to start a quarterback for him, at least according to what head coach Luke Travelpiece tells us. So that's going to be an interesting game. Now, we saw this Southside team a season ago. They went to the WPIL championship a season ago. They lost to Fort Cherry. James and I saw them at Union, a game that we thought Union was actually going to win. The weather that night was not great. Southside just took that game and mucked it up and made it ugly. And if they can do that against Neshannock, well, okay, fine. I mean, that's the style that they can play. They won't throw the ball a whole ton. They have athletes that can catch it, but they want to line up behind their big offensive line and pound you. They want to make the game ugly for you. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, they want to shorten the game and like you said, make it ugly and make it physical. And that's, who they are and what they've always achieved in the past. So you can't look past them. Obviously, when you look at that game coming up, it's going to be a game where the team that comes prepared to be physical and be able to do it. The playmakers on Neshannock makes you think that they have a chance in the way that defense is playing. I think that's going to be key is the defense. If the defense can make some stops early in that ball game, take control, and allow Mazzocco and Cabela's and others be who they are on the football field, they have opportunity to come away with the victory.
Again, that game, Tim and I will be at that game, so you can watch that 6:30 pregame show for both Laurel and Shenango and Neshannock and Southside, and 7 o'clock kickoff for both of them. In 4A, this is a monster game for Newcastle. They're 4-2. They lost their second straight in conference to Montour last week. They were not competitive in the last 2 games. This is a big Parkway matchup. Status of Kyrell Harris and Nate McKnight is unknown right now. Newcastle got to cut down on the penalties. Can't have 19 penalties in this game again. And they have to do something defensively to help their offense out. They looked like they were going to fire early in that game against Montour last week, and then they just were not able to penetrate that offensive line at all. And of the 4A teams, Newcastle has allowed the third most points this season, 218. The only team that's allowed more, West Mifflin 223 and Hampton 243. Their defense has to step up in this game, get some stops for them. And especially if one or both of those 2 guys are out on Friday, their defense, the onus is on them. This is how they're going to have to win this game. They must win this game to have any shot, you would think, at the playoffs. Win this game, hope Montour knocks out West A when they play them, and then Newcastle can maybe get a wild card.
And that's exactly their path. Let's be honest. That is their path. But the most important thing is getting past West Allegheny. And that's not going to be easy. It's on the road. Cutting down penalties, absolutely at 100%. I'm sure Coach Mo has been talking about that all week long. And then I think what really is going to be really important is special teams here. Can they get a big play from the special teams? I mean, they have playmakers. Chase Lemon can do something special anytime the ball's in his hands. If McKnight's available, big things can happen. We've seen him return a touchdown earlier this year. Special teams are going to be big. And that means when you punt the ball, be able to move the ball downfield and cover it and prevent, West Allegheny from having any momentum. I think it's really watch for special teams in that game. I think it's going to play a big part.
For a Newcastle side, they have lost the last 2 to West Allegheny 98-14, including last year 46-0. So they're going to try to right that ship and snap a 2-game losing streak on the road at West A. That game is Friday night. That'll be one of the 6 that we cover on our Red Zone channel on Friday night. You move down to 2A, the Midwestern Conference. These next 3 are in the Midwestern. Mohawk takes on Western Beaver. This is a huge game, both at 4-2 and 3-1 in the division. Part of the teams that are now behind Mohawk that they must beat to maintain a top 2 seed in the playoffs. After this week, Mohawk finishes with Freedom and Riverside. So the Riverside game's not a given because Riverside's pretty good. But we emphasized the importance of Mohawk finishing number 2. Obviously, they would not beat out Elwood City because they lost to him head-to-head. They got to finish number 2 because if you look at that 2A, the 2A standings, it is a mess from top to bottom of who might fit in there as a wild card team. So just handle your business, be the number 2 seed out of the Midwestern. You're assured a playoff spot, and then you go from there. The chips fall where they may.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you have kind of control your own destiny going forward, and it starts this week. Obviously, they're going to have to come away ready to play against New Brighton and get that win. I mean, that's the bottom line. This is where they're at. This is what they need to do. Mohawk gotta find a way. Like I said, their destiny's in front of them. They know their path. It starts this week. And again, here's a team that started to show last week what I mentioned earlier, a more complete team when they were able to throw the ball again. And that's going to be big. If they can get that passing game to be effective, if Logan could be a target for them, they might be peaking at the right time of the season.
And they got to, of course, contend with Javen Peel, who threw for 300 yards.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, that's not easy.
Again, it goes back then, you look at their running game. If they could shorten this game, keep him off the field, and take off, even if they take 4 or 5 minutes and don't score, but take 4 or 5 minutes each quarter off, try to keep him on the bench as much as possible. I think that's going to be a big part of that game.
Elsewhere in the Midwestern, now, I said earlier that Elwood City is basically downhill the rest of the way. They do have a tough game with Riverside on Friday night. They're at Riverside. Riverside's 3-1 in the conference. Elwood City is 4-0. So a slip up here, Riverside would then go into a tie for first place. This is really the last big test for Elwood City. They remain in the driver's seat for the conference title. The Riverside defense is pretty good. They're averaging only 16.2 a game allowed, but the Elwood City defense is better as a whole. 12 sacks, 40 tackles for loss, 8 picks, 5 fumble recoveries. I love this Elwood City defense. I know that the headlines and the questions about whether they can win or anything are going to be based around the offense and whether Palmer McCain goes nuts, whether Chris Smiley puts together a good game. But again, I have stressed this since day one. If you're going to win in the state of Pennsylvania in the month of November and into December, you have to run the ball and you have to play defense.
Yes.
This team is doing both of those
things
really well. And then you factor in last week that Smiley, the quarterback, had 73 yards rushing to go with Palmer McCain, who was over 100. If he continues to do that and they keep playing defense the way they are, nobody's touching them the rest of the way.
Yeah, and
at least in the regular season.
No, you're right. They have the opportunity to finish strong. There's no question about it. And this Riverside team, they're a team that kind of plays up to the challenges in front of them. Whoever they're playing, they seem to find a way to make it a competitive game, and I think that's going to be really key. And they have the opportunity, to pull up the upset, to become the guy who the team that really throw a monkey wrench in what everyone's thinking. Getting back to Elwood City, Elijah Palmer McCain has 852 yards and 14 touchdowns this year. He needs to be effective again this week. Obviously, when you talk about Smiley, you know what he can do. But, EPM has a chance to go over 1,000 yards with a big game. 150 yards is not out of the question for him. And he could be the first county player this year to rush for over 1,000 yards.
Elsewhere in the 2A Midwestern, you got Union at 1-5. They're 1-3 in the conference against Freedom. 1-3, 2-3 overall. It's a second straight opportunity for Union to win here this season. First time they can string back-to-back wins together. Freedom's only averaging 10, just under 11 points a game. They've lost their last 3 of 4, but they played Riverside tough last week. They only lost 14-0. And this Union team, look, if they're getting the type of defense that they are from Jamel Mitchell, and if they're getting the type of passing performance from Lucas Stanley that they got last week, maybe they can get some lightning in a bottle here the tail end of the season and get some wins together.
Yeah, I mean, this is pride time. Let's be honest. This is a school for the last 2 years been very competitive, and went to a state title game and deep into the playoff run. So they want to be able to achieve. They chose to move up to 2A. They want to show that they can handle this. They're the smallest team in 2A, and they got a tough start to the season. However, last week was a big win for them. Just to come away with a W, get some confidence, like you said, show a passing game that they really was absent the entire season. If they can become a more complete game, this is great. And then you look at their defense. I mean, they only gave up 8 points last week, so that's huge. And they need to score points, though. I think that's the key. If they can play from ahead, they're a much better team. And that's going to be the key. If they can get, short field, take advantage of it. If they can run the ball, throw the ball, and play some defense, they have a chance to at least, like you said, show that they can compete in the Midwestern Conference. I mean, for the smallest team in 2A, I think that, this is important to them.
Our last game of the week, and by the way, the Union, I don't know. I mean, they would be under 500. They'd have to leapfrog a bunch of teams.
It's
in
probably a long
2A.
shot. Yeah. I mean, there are just too many teams in front of them. But right now, all you got to worry about is this week and then following week and see if you can, finish out strong.
It kind of becomes a little bit about next year. I know Stanley won't be there, but for the guys that are there, and they've looked really good in spots.
Yeah, they
this
have.
Season.
They've made enough plays that you can see. I mean, it's a coach needs team. Deep down they're well coached and they're ready to play. So it's a combination of how do you get better this year? How do you make this as successful as you can, and then see what happens. I mean, like you said, playoffs. There's just too many teams in front of them. Let's just be honest. It's tough to leapfrog that many teams. But all you can do is take care of the business this week, and that's Freedom, and go from there. And Freedom is a team that they can beat. I mean, Freedom's, hasn't scored a lot of points. They've only scored 47 points in the conference. So, this might be a slugfest in a sense, underneath. But we seen last week that Union has the ability to put some points on the scoreboard.
Really puts in perspective what Union went through at the beginning of the year, because had they won maybe 2 more of those games, they might be in a position to sneak in the playoffs with the back end of their schedule as kind of down as some of those teams are. But it is what it is right now. They're 1-5. They're going to try to win a second straight on Friday night. Our final game of the weekend is up in District 10. It's a 1A matchup. It's Wilmington and Mercer. Wilmington, of course, 4-2, 2-1. That came off that loss to Farrell last weekend and just shellacked Reynolds 56-9 on Reynolds home turf. Mercer is 1-6. They have not won since week 0 when they beat Franklin 8-7. And going into play last week, Mercer had only 5 red zone opportunities the whole season and had scored only 10 touchdowns. I don't agree with ever putting a spread on high school football, but this is name your price right here if you're Wilmington.
Yes, it really is. This should be a game where I hate saying call it a practice game, but in a sense, you want to do certain things. You want to achieve certain plays. You want to be able to work on things that you need to work on that's not against your own defense in practice. You want to be able to take control of this game in the first quarter, and by halftime know who's going to win it, and then to make decisions on how many plays you want those guys, your top players, to play the rest of the game, and then get them out and get some players who don't get a lot of experience on a Friday night an opportunity to play. I know they're not tremendously deep. I mean, we're talking about a single A team. However, there's players who are, freshmen and maybe sophomores that haven't got and get ready for that push run as they continue the march in District 10.
That Mohawk Western Beaver game, by the way, is Saturday. And we are actually going to have coverage of that game on Saturday as well. So that is not Friday night. That is Saturday. So we actually have 3 games on our network for you on over the weekend. We have 2 on Friday. We have Laurel and Shenango, and then Neshannock, Southside Beaver. And don't forget, Friday night is the Red Zone channel. 6 games. We will have live look-ins on 6 games. James Dotson and our producer, Matt Flannery, will be in the studio for you on Friday night here. You can tune in and check those out. They will go live to each game. They'll let you know what's going on. They'll take the audio feed of some of the games, tap into some of our calls at the 2 games that we have in our network, and they will take you around the county on Friday night on a Red Zone style broadcast here at the Lawrence County Sports Network. So we're looking forward to checking that out. We hope to hear a lot of positive feedback about how that looked. And then otherwise, Laurel, Shenango, and then Tim and I will be at Southside for Neshannock and Southside Beaver. Couple more weeks to go. Any final thoughts here before we get out of here tonight?
I think most important thing right now is just try to finish strong. I mean, we got a lot of teams that are right on the verge of the playoffs. They have to find a way to win this week and continue their march. I think that's the most important thing. And we're going to need a team like Newcastle to find a way to score some points that they haven't done in conference. It's another away game against West A. So, a big test again for the Red Hurricanes.
And we'll bring it all to you on Friday night. That will come your way starting at 6:30 with our pregame shows, and then 7 o'clock kickoff between Laurel and Shenango, and also Neshannock out Southside Beaver. That's going to do it for us here tonight. For our studio producer, Matt Flannery. For James Dotson, he'll be back next week. For my partner, Tim Continenza, we'll talk to you Friday night. Have a great night. We'll see you at the games on Friday night here on the Lawrence County Sports Network.
The gold ball.